In this video, we're going to describe the differences between survey and coordinate geometry points, often referred to as COGO points. On the left of the display window, we have a survey point, number 578, and on the right-hand side of the display window, we have a COGO point, point number 579. We have four bulleted differences between those points. We're going to walk through them, and we're going to show the differences inside of Civil 3D. The first difference is that survey points are displayed on both the Prospector and the Survey tabs, whereas COGO points are only displayed on the Prospector tab. If I go to the Survey tab of the toolspace, and I go to my Survey import event, and I select Survey points, down here you can see that point 578 is displayed only. We do not have point 579 showing up in this location. Whereas in the Prospector tab, under points, we have both point 578 and point 579 showing. The second difference is that survey points have an icon next to them that look like a survey target, whereas COGO points have an icon next to them that looks like a circle overlaid on crosshairs. That is displayed below in the points list, showing the survey icon or the COGO point icon. The third difference is that survey points cannot be moved or edited without accessing the survey database and using specialized commands for editing survey points, whereas COGO points can be moved even using basic non-Civil 3D drafting commands. If I select a survey point and I try and move it using grip editing, it will not move. And if I type in a command to move it, when I select the movement of it, it will bounce back to its original location. Whereas a COGO point can be selected, grip edited, and moved using a move command. To edit a survey point, you have to go to the Survey tab, go to the Survey points, and choose to edit those points. In here, in the panorama window, you can select the easting, the northing, the elevation, the description, or the point number, and change them. The other difference is that survey points cannot be edited in a properties window, whereas COGO points can be edited in a property window. If I go and select the points and right click and choose edit points, inside of the panorama window, you'll notice that the survey point is grayed and uneditable for the point number, easting, northing, point elevation, and raw description, whereas the COGO point can be edited for point number, easting, northing, point elevation. In this video, we're going to create COGO points using the points creation tool. We're also going to drop down and describe the different point creation methods inside of the point creation tool. The point creation tool is contained in the Home tab of the ribbon bar under Create Ground Data, the points dropdown. The points creation tool contains all of the options below it in this dropdown, with the exception of northing, easting, bearing, azimuth, angle, deflection, as well as create points group, create COGO points from corridor, create blocks from COGO points, and convert land desktop points. If I initiate the points creation tool, the create points dialog shows up. The create points dialog has 7 options, 6 of which are drop downs. These drop downs correlate back to the methods that we can use inside of the create ground data points drop down. The first drop down is the points creation miscellaneous methods. The second dropdown is the intersections methods. The third dropdown is the alignments methods. The fourth dropdown is the surface methods. The fifth dropdown is the interpolate methods. And the sixth dropdown is the slope methods. The seventh option is an import points from a file option. Inside of each of these dropdowns, the title for how to create that point is pretty self-explanatory, but if the title alone is not enough to describe to you how to create that point using that method, you can go back to your points dropdown, and under the section, if you hover over that selection you want to use, it will give you a lengthier description of how to create that point or what that point creation method does. So for example, if we wanted to know what the intersection method of direction object was, then we could come over to intersections, hover over direction object, and it would tell us that a direction object command creates a point at the intersection of a direction and a selected arc, line, polyline, lot line, feature line, or figure. We're going to go ahead and create some points using the manual method. So I'm going to go ahead and initiate the manual method, and in the command line, you'll see that it is telling me to specify a location for my new point. We're going to create 4 points, each correlating to a corner on this hypothetical parcel that we have here. So I'm going to snap on this corner, and you'll see that the command line now tells me to enter a point description. I'm going to use the point description calc for all 4 of these points. And now it's prompting me to specify a point elevation. Because I'm only looking for a location of these possible corners, I'm not going to specify an elevation, so I will leave it as a default of 0 feet. Now it's telling me to specify a new location. I'm going to go faster now, and I'm going to go through and create the remaining 3 points. This corner, and now you can see that Civil 3D is prompting me to give another point description, but it retains my original point description for my last point that I created, which is calc. So I can go ahead and just hit enter, and then I can hit enter again to set it as 0 feet. I can select the next corner and hit enter twice, and it creates that next point. And I can select the 4th corner and hit enter twice, and I now have my 4th point. In this video, we're going to outline the different point parameters inside of the point creation toolbar, as well as dive into the points that we've already created and modify some of those point parameters. Specifically, we're going to talk about point identity, default layer, default style, and default name format. To first talk about the different point parameters inside of the point creation toolbar, we need to open the point creation toolbar, which is under the create ground data, points dropdown, point creation tools. In the point creation toolbar, on the far right-hand side, there is an expanded arrow for more of the point parameters. So inside of these point parameters, these are defaults that we can change to modify how the points are displayed once we create them. If it's already created, these changes will not affect points that are already in the drawing. It's only changes to points that are going to be created in the drawing. We're going to go down from the top down and talk about these different parameters. So under default layer, you can choose what you want the default layer for your points to be. So the points that we've created already are on vNode. If you wanted to change the point layer, then you could hit the ellipses afterwards and then choose the layer that you want to have your points created on moving forward. Underneath default layer is the points creation method and different parameters that are associated with how you create the points. So what the local coordinates are going to be, northing, easting versus easting, northing, or X and Y, or Y and X. You have grid coordinates, and it's just going to flop grid northing and easting, either northing, easting, or easting, northing. Same thing with geographic coordinates, latitude, longitude, or longitude, latitude. When you're creating a point, Civil 3D prompts you for certain entities. When we created our points, it prompted us for the elevation and the description. And the reason for that is because you had a prompt for elevation set as manual in these parameters, and we had a prompt for description set as manual. We had a none for point names. That's why we were never asked for a point name when we created our original points. Inside of this, you can have an automatic creation or a none selection. We'll go into what an automatic creation would do in another parameter further down on the list. So after you have your prompts, you have your defaults for your prompts, which are default elevation was set as 0. So when we select to create a point and it prompts us for an elevation, then the default elevation that it's going to give us an option for is 0. Our default description, we don't have anything put in, and that's why we had to choose calc, and then it retains what your last description was or what your last parameter was. Moving down from there, we have match on description parameters. Inside of a description, you can have certain parameters that are spaced out. After your initial description, you can have your first parameter, your second parameter, and so on and so forth. If you have it set to true, then inside of description key sets, which we haven't discussed yet, but we will later in depth, you can have different parameters control how your points scale or how they're displayed. And this will choose whether or not you can match those description parameters or whether you choose to ignore those. And if you choose to ignore them, you'd set it to false. disabling description keys. If you want to force some of the selections that we have down below, you would set your disable descriptions keys set to true, and it would ignore any description keys that we have inside of this drawing. We haven't talked about description keys yet, but we will in future videos. So for now, we're going to leave it as false. And then echo coordinates to the command line. After you create a point, you will see those coordinates, northings and eastings, or whatever you have set as your local grid or geographic coordinates, will show up inside of the command line up here. So moving on from here, we have our default style. So if you had set your disable description keys to true, then when you create a point, then it would accept its point style and point label style. In here, these are set as grayed out, and that's because we have this set to false. If we had this set to true, you'll notice these become ungrayed and you can choose them. Moving down from there, we have our default name format. Since we had under the points creation method prompt for point name is none, it ignored our point names. If we had chose automatic, then it would come down here and it would use these point name templates for how to create the name for those points. And you can go in here and you can modify these and choose what you want the name to be. And you can also set the counter, starting numbers, and increment values. And then from there, you have your point identity. And your point identity is inside of these points. If you look at the set point, the point number over here is the point identity. And so what we have here is the point identity is telling us what the next point number is that we're going to create. So if we created a point, that point would be created as point number 5. You can choose to use sequential numbering. If you set it to false, then every time you create a point, it's going to ask you for what point number you want to use. If you leave it as true, it will use this point number offset to choose what the next point number is going to be. So if we create a point 5, then the point number offset of 1 will say that the next point after 5 should be 6. You can also do sequencing numbers from set number points. And if point numbers are supplied, say you were doing an import, then it'll choose to use those numbers that are supplied. You can force names, or you can leave it as false and not force names, or you can set it to true and force names based on the imports. If point numbers already exist, what will happen? It will notify you, it will renumber them, it will merge the points, or it will overwrite points. Same thing if point names already exist, it will notify you, it'll use a name template, or it'll use a counter. And then if point numbers need to be assigned, then it will use the next point number, or it will sequence from, and that's when you use your sequence point numbers. When we created our points, we didn't set any of these parameters, so I know that I want to change these point parameters. I would have preferred to start my point identities because these are calc points. I don't want to have them on the low numbers that would come in from a survey. I want to set them on a higher number, that's something that I'm not going to have overwritten when I do a survey import. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to jump into these points and I'm going to edit them. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to right click on the point and I'm going to click on edit points. And inside of this panorama window, you'll see we have our point identity, which is the number. We have our eastings, our northings, our elevations, our names, and our raw descriptions, which are all things that can be set when you're creating the points or can be forced from your point parameters. Same thing with style and point label style. We had it set as use description key sets, so it did not force a style or a point label style. And then we have our point layer. So I'm going to jump back over to the left-hand side for our point numbers. I want to have my points be 1 through 4, actually be 3001 through 3004. So I'm going to go ahead and select 1 and click on it and change it to 3001 and do that for the rest of the points. In this video, we're going to assign point marker styles and point label styles to points that are already inside of this drawing file. We're going to do this by editing a list of the points and forcing an assigned marker style and label style. In order to show this list of points, we're going to go over to the Prospector tab of the Tools window and right-click on Points. We're going to select Edit Points, and the panorama window of all the points in this drawing is going to display itself. If you navigate over to the right-hand panel of this panorama window, you're going to see a section where it says Style and Points Label Style. Under Style, if you select the empty box and you click it twice, a Select Point Style window is going to show up. Right now we have none selected. If we drop down, we can select any of the available point marker styles that are in this drawing. I'm going to go ahead and select Benchmark and select OK, and I'm going to do that through the other 3 remaining points. Like I did on this, all the points are the same, and they're going to have the same style and the same point label style. A faster way of doing this, instead of selecting every single one, is to select the first one and select the last one in a list of ones that you want to have the same label style or marker style, and continue to hold down the Shift button while you select any of the boxes. A Select Label Style window will pop up, and you can drop down and select Description Only, or any of the other ones that are available from point labels that are already in this drawing. I'm going to go ahead and select Description Only and select OK, and it applies Description Only to all of the points that I had Shift selected. So I'm going to go ahead and check the green box in the upper corner to accept the changes that I made. And if I zoom into one of these points, you'll notice that the point style marker changed and the point label style changed. In this drawing, we're going to create description key sets and define marker styles and label styles for a few raw descriptions. What description key sets do is they look at a raw description for a point and apply set styles and parameters to those points based on what the description is. So in order to get description key sets, what we have to do is navigate over to the tool space window and go to the Settings tab. We're going to expand points and expand description key sets, and you'll see that we have a current description key set of Essentials in here. If you wanted to create a new description key set, you could right-click on that and select New. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to edit the existing one that's in this drawing, and by selecting Edit keys after right-clicking on it. In this panorama window, you'll see your full description key set and each of the description keys associated with it. We currently have ones that say STA, SWMH, and TR, all with an asterisk behind it. The asterisk basically tells Civil 3D to ignore anything that comes after the raw description of whatever comes before it. In our case, say, for example, tree, oftentimes you'll have a point that says TR, and then it'll have a space, and then it'll say 12 pine. And so that's telling us that it's a 12-inch pine tree. But what the description key set does is it says, take TR and apply all these parameters and ignore the 12 and the pine for how you're going to display this. Moving on from there, you can force a style, you can force a point label style, so a marker style and a point label style, a format, which is a full description of that point, the layer that you're going to put that point on, and then you can have scale parameters. So like in our 12 tree, 12 is a scale parameter, and 12 would be the first parameter, and you can scale your points based on that parameter, or you can choose not to do that, and it'll be whatever your marker style says that it's going to be for size. You can also apply a rotation based on a second parameter and force those rotations, or you can rotate them manually later. What I'm going to go ahead and do is if I right-click on this and I choose New, I can create a new description key set, and I'm going to create it for the points that are in our drawing, which is Calc with all caps. And I'm going to apply an asterisk to the end of it so I can ignore anything that comes after Calc. I'm going to force a style, a marker style of Standard. I'm going to force a point label style of Description Only. I'm going to force a format of Survey Search Point because we're searching for points on a parcel. I'm going to force a layer of vNode. And then I'm going to leave all of my scale parameters and rotation parameters as they currently exist. As you can see, it could take a long time to create a description key set for many points that are inside of a drawing. So if you have a description key in a drawing that you want to port over to this drawing, you can do so by going over to the tool space window and going to this drop down for active drawing settings view. If you drop this down and you choose master view, it will show you all of the drawings that you currently have open inside of Civil 3D. So at the top, you can see the file that I'm working in, and lower in here, you can see a file that I have called blank base with description key sets. This description key set, as you can see, is quite larger than the description key set that we have in the current working file. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to close this down. I'm going to find my description key set for my blank base with description key sets. I'm going to find essentials. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select it and I'm going to drag it down to the current working file. I'm going to expand that current working file. I'm going to go to points. I'm going to expand points. Then I'm going to go to description key sets and I'm going to drop it inside of this description key set folder. And what you'll see is I get a warning that I have a duplicate item name. Because I want to overwrite this essentials in my current working drawing, I'm going to go ahead and choose overwrite, and I'm going to select OK. And then if I go into my working file and I change from master view to active drawing settings view, and I go to my points, description key sets, essentials, and right click and edit keys, you'll see all of those description keys that were in my base drawing have been ported over into my current active drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and select OK for this. And the next thing you have to understand is that because you have created a description key set does not mean that the points that are already in the drawing are going to display with that description key set. Any point that's already created will stay as it is unless you force the description key set over the existing points. New points will accept the description key set, but old points will stay as they are unless you force them. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to select points. We're going to right click and we're going to choose select to select all the points in the drawing. We're going to right click, and inside of this, you'll see apply description key sets. If you select apply description key sets, it will apply the key sets to all the points that are currently selected. So I'm going to choose apply description key sets. And what you'll see happen here is our benchmark point marker style changed to a standard, and our description label style changed so that it's labeling our full description, not our raw description. In this video, we're going to learn how to manipulate markers and labels for points. What we're going to specifically do is we're going to learn how to rotate markers only, rotate labels only, rotate markers and labels together, and create a dragged state for a label. So we're going to work our way clockwise around this parcel. First, we're going to go to this point here, and if you select it and you hover over the grip edit, what you can see is you have a choice for move point, rotate label and marker, rotate marker. And under this grip, you can say move label or rotate label. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rotate that marker. So by selecting that, you can see your point marker rotates, but your point label stays the same. So we're going to go ahead and select a new rotation for that point marker and escape out. Now we'll move on to this next one, and we're going to choose to rotate the label. So if you choose rotate label, you can rotate this label. And as you can see, the readability for this orients the text differently based on how you're rotating around this point. We're going to set a new rotation for that label and move on to the next one. You can see that the label rotated, but the marker did not. From here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to choose rotate label and marker. So as we rotate this label, the label rotates and so does the marker. As you can see, they're both moving together. So we're going to set a new orientation for this label and marker. And then we're going to go on to the next point, which is our last one, and we're going to set a drag state for this. So if you go to the label grip edit, you can go to move label. And what that effectively does is it allows you to move the text around the drawing, and it will create a leader that will point to the point, but move the text off to and away from it wherever we set it to. In this video, we're going to create a new point style and assign it to the points that are in this drawing. To create a new point style, what you have to do is you have to go to the tool space and go to the settings tab. Inside the settings tab, under points, you can navigate to the point styles dropdown. Inside of here is all of the point styles that are associated with this drawing. To create a new one, you right-click on the point styles folder and select New. This will open up a point style creation window box for a new point style. We're going to go ahead and call this new point style Calc, because it's going to be the point style associated with our calc points from earlier. We'll navigate to the next tab, which will define how our marker is displayed. And you can, for a marker, use an AutoCAD point for a marker. You can use a custom marker defined by these traits inside of this custom marker style box. Or you can use an AutoCAD block for a symbol. You can define a marker rotation angle, and you can also define your marker size. The marker size can be defined using the drawing scale, and you can set the drawing scale size that you want to have it at. You can also use a fixed scale. You can use a size in absolute units, and you can use a size relative to your view. I'm going to go ahead and create a new marker style that is a plus sign with a circle. I'm going to move on to the 3D geometry, and this is where you can define how you want that point to be displayed in three-dimensional space. And do you want to use the point elevation, flatten points to a specific elevation, or exaggerate the points by a scale factor? I'm going to leave the points at their specified elevation. Then you move on to the display tab, where you can choose how that point is going to be displayed in plan view, model view, profile view, and section view. And then you have the summary tab, which goes over all of the selections that you've made on the previous tabs. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply and hit OK. And now down inside of our point styles, you'll see that we now have a calc point style. To apply this point style, what you need to do is navigate back to the prospector window and go to points, and you can choose edit points. And we could go into this panorama window and force the style by selecting and shift selecting and clicking on that standard and then choosing calc. However, because calc is part of a description key set, if we ever applied the description key sets back into the drawing, then our marker style would be switched back to standard, because in our description key set, our style for our marker is set to standard. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to jump back into settings, and I'm going to jump back into points, back into description key sets, and I'm going to edit my keys. I'm going to go find calc, and I'm going to choose my style, and I'm going to set that style to calc and select OK and confirm. And then I'm going to navigate back into the prospector tab. I'm going to go back to points. I'm going to right click. I'm going to click select, and then I'm going to right click again and apply my description keys. And now you'll see that if I zoom in on a point, our new marker style that we just created has been applied to our calc points. In this video, we're going to create a new point label style and assign it to the existing points inside of the drawing. To do this, it's very similar to creating our new point marker style and assigning it to our existing points. What we have to do is we have to navigate over to the tool space window and to the settings tab. Inside of the settings tab, we're going to drop down the points section, and we're going to drop down label styles. Inside of label styles, what you can do is you can right click on the folder for label styles and create a new one. You can also edit existing label styles by right clicking and choosing edit, or you can copy a existing label style and create a new label style based on that old existing label style. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a new label style based off of the point number and description label style. So I'm going to right click on point and description, and I'm going to create copy. When I do that, a label style composer window opens up for point number and description copy. I'm going to delete off the text that says copy, and I'm going to add in a new description of saying point number, raw description, full description. If you may remember, we have points in here that have a raw description of calc and a full description of survey search calc. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to jump over into the General tab. In the General tab, you have information for your text style, what type of text you want to have in it, the label visibility, and the label layer. You also have your orientation of the label based on object view or world coordinate system, and a forced insertion of none, top or bottom. You also have your plan readability, which changes how the text is displayed based on the rotation of your point and label. What we're going to do is navigate over into the Layout tab, and you'll see that we have a drop down here for the components of the label. We have a point number and a point description component. We're going to go ahead and drop down over here and create a new text line. You can also create lines and blocks as part of labels. We're going to go ahead and create new text. We're going to change the name of that text to raw description. And we're going to anchor that component to the point number, and we're going to anchor it to the bottom left of that component. What we have to do now is jump over to our point description, and we're going to change it to full description so that it coordinates with what our contents are, which is full description. We're also going to modify the anchor component and change it from point number to raw description so that the text for our full description falls below our raw description text. We're going to jump back to raw description, and we're going to change the contents of that label. We're going to erase out label text by highlighting and backspacing, and we're going to drop down, and you have all these choices for how you want to have label content for your point label style. You can have point number, easting, northing, point elevation, name, raw description, which is what we want, full description, grid easting, grid northing, longitude, latitude, scale factor, convergence, and survey point. So we're going to go ahead and select raw description, and you can choose how you want the capitalization to be done for that. You can choose preserve case, uppercase, lowercase, or title caps. I'm going to preserve the case because we did it as all caps. And then to port that label over into the content of your text, you have to hit the arrow, and it will bring over a code for what the text is going to display on your new label. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And you can see here now we have to adjust where our attachment is. We have it attached at the middle center of our label. We want it to be the top left of our label. And so now you can see we have our point number, what is our raw description, and then we have our full description. So other options that you can have is you can change your text height, your rotation angle of your text. You can change your X and Y offsets from your attachment point. You can change line weights, colors, and then you can choose border visibility. So you can choose your visibility is true or false for a border, what type of border, whether you want that border to be background mask, what the gap is around that border, what color it's going to be, and what line type and what line weight it's going to be. We're going to go ahead and move on to the drag state. This is all information on if we took that label and we did a drag state like we did in this bottom corner here. And we're going to go ahead and leave this blank. We'll just leave it as the default. But if you wanted to, you could change any of these components. And then from summary, you have all of the summary of the previous tabs. So we're going to go ahead and hit apply and hit OK. Now, inside of our label style, in the settings tab of our tool space window, you'll see that we have a point number, raw description, full description, label style. To apply that, we could do it the way that we possibly might have done it by editing points and forcing the point label style. But as we did when we forced the marker style, we have a description key set for our calc points. So we're going to go ahead and go to description key sets, essentials, edit those keys. We're going to go to our calc, and we're going to go to our point label style, and we're going to choose point, raw description, full description, and select OK. And close the panorama window, navigate back to Prospector, right click on points. We're going to select, we're going to right click, and then we are going to apply description keys. Now, when we zoom in on this point, you'll notice that our label style now shows our point number, our raw description, and our full description. In this video, we're going to edit some point properties. Specifically, we're going to adjust the datum of the points that are in this drawing, and we're going to edit the datum and coordinate properties of the drawing itself. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create a couple of extra points in the drawing so that we can readily see the change in elevations when we adjust the datum across a bunch of points in the drawing. So we're going to go ahead and navigate up to the points dropdown in the points creation toolbar. We're going to go ahead and create some points manually. I'm going to do one at this endpoint here. I'm going to call the point raw description GS for ground shot, and I'm going to give it an elevation of 150. I'm going to create another one down here, and I'm going to also call it GS, which is being populated in my command line. So I'm going to leave it as GS and hit enter, and I'm going to apply a elevation of 100. I'm also going to apply a point to the midpoint of this line, and I'm going to call it GS, and I'm going to give it an elevation of 125. And I'm going to apply another point to the midpoint of this line, and I'm going to call it GS, and I'm going to give it an elevation of 125. And then I'm going to hit escape to get out of the point creation and close the point creation toolbar. You'll now see there are 4 new points. You can see them easily when you go to points and choose edit points. You'll see we have 5 through 8, plus our original 3001 through 3004. And in here, you'll see that the point elevations now are 0 for all of our calc points, and we now have assigned elevations for our ground shot points with their respective easting and northing coordinate locations. So I'm going to go ahead and check yes for this. If you select any of the points, in the contextual ribbon bar up here, you'll see the datum selection right here. If you select datum, up in the command line, you will see a command for edit point datum, change in elevation, or reference. If you want to change your datum, you can give it a new datum elevation assignment of positive or negative, and then it will adjust the points based on that point elevation change. So I'm going to go ahead and say do an elevation change for all points of 50 feet. And I'm going to hit enter. And so if I go to my points now and I choose edit, I will see that all of my elevation points have risen by 50 feet. Even my calc points have risen by 50 feet. Now, that may or may not be an acceptable solution for you. So if you don't like the fact that your calc points got raised by 50 feet, you could select them and change them all to 0. Or you can select your points again, choose datum, and choose -50. And what you'll see is that all the points dropped back down by 50 feet. And you could adjust each of these points individually by selecting them and adding 50 feet to them. The other thing that you can do while you're inside of this panorama window for editing points is you can adjust your easting and northing of the points that you've selected. Say you had a point readout of what a specific location was and what elevation it was, then you could change those eastings and those northings and choose a elevation based on that point readout, and then it would modify it in the drawing down here. The other thing that Civil 3D can do is it can modify your datum and your coordinates and give you additional information based on an actual real-world location. So if you navigate up to the upper left-hand corner and drop this down and go to Drawing Utilities, and you go to Drawing Settings, inside of Drawing Settings, you can see that there is a selection for what your drawing units are and what your imperial to metric conversions are, scales. But down here in Zone, our current drawing is set to no datum, no projection, because this project file is not in the real world. So it's all theoretical. But if you were working somewhere, say you were working in California, you could scroll down to California, USA, California, and select that, and then your available coordinate systems would populate. And you can choose an available coordinate system based on where you're working, NAD 27, NAD 83, Cal zone units. So if we selected California Zone 1 US feet, then it would populate your coordinate system code and your descriptions. And in transformation, it will populate that zone over here. And then you can apply elevation scaling factors based on your zones. So if I go ahead and hit apply and hit OK, now inside of our points, if I choose edit points, what you'll see populated over here is your real world coordinates for the points based on the zone that you've selected for your drawing. In this video, we're going to take the points that are in the drawing already and create point groups based on those points that are in the drawing. To create a point group, what you have to do is you navigate over to the tool space. In the Prospector tab, under point groups, you can expand it out. What is always inside of a Civil 3D drawing is the all points point group. That point group contains all the points that are inside of one drawing. To create a new point group, what you're going to go ahead and do is you're going to select point groups, right click, and select new. Inside of the new point groups properties window, we can change the name of it. We're going to create a point group for all the points that have a raw description of GS. So I'm going to call the point name or the point group name GS. And you can apply default styles for the points that fall inside of this point group. So for our GS points, we're going to call them basic points, and we are going to give them a point number, elevation, and description. Moving over, you can add point groups to a new point group. So you can say, I want to create a point group that has all the points, or I can have, if I had multiple point groups in here, I could say, I want all the points from GS and survey groups or something like that. And you would just have to check the box for any of the already created point groups. Under raw description matching, any of the description keys that we have in our description key sets show up here. And so I know that we have a description key for our ground shots. So I'm going to go ahead and select GS as a raw description matching. If you don't have a raw description that you want to select, but you want to include certain points, you can move over to the include tab and you can include points with numbers matching, and you can select sets in the drawing or project points in a window, or you can just type out the points. You could type out a specific point, or you could type out ranges. So I could say, I want point 3001 and I want 3003 through 3004. And then if I go over to my points list, it'll have my GS plus 3001, 3003, and 3004. I'm going to go ahead and take these out because this is just my GS points. You could also choose elevations matching, names, or full descriptions, or you can choose to include all points. You can also choose to exclude specific points from a file. So you can choose points with numbers matching, elevations matching, names matching, raw descriptions matching, or full descriptions matching. This is your query builder for how to find out certain points that you're going to use inside of your include and exclude tabs. Then you have your overrides for how certain points are going to be displayed based on this point group. Then you have the list of points that are in that point group, and then you have the summary of all the previous tabs. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply and hit OK. And what you'll notice is that when I created this point group, because of the displays that I chose in my point group, it forced certain display settings for these points, and it set the style and the point label style based on the group that it's in. So we have a basic point marker style and a label style of point number, elevation, description. In this video, we're going to change our point group display order and see what effect that has on our drawing file, as well as discuss overrides inside of our point groups. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to navigate to our points group, all points, and we're going to go ahead and create a new point label style so that we can see the effect that changing our display order has on our drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new label style. I'm going to call this new label style display order change. And I'm going to go to my layout tab and I'm going to change my point number. I'm going to change the contents of that point number. I'm going to delete out the point number information and say display order change. And I'm going to hit OK. And you'll notice here it says display order change. I'm going to change the text height to 1, so it's extremely large text. And then I'm going to move down into point elevation, and I'm going to change my visibility for that to false. And I'm going to change my point description visibility to false. So all I'm displaying is my point number, which text is saying display order change. I'm going to hit apply and hit OK. I'm going to make sure that I have my point label style selected as display order change, and I'm going to hit apply and hit OK. Inside of our drawing, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to change our display order settings for GS and all points. So I'm going to zoom in on one of our ground shot points, and I'm going to go ahead and switch this display order. So to change the display order, you're going to go to point groups, the header tab for it, and you're going to right click and choose properties. This window here shows the display order. What a display order does for Civil 3D is it looks down the list from top to bottom, and it determines each point as it goes down. It reads what points are in each group and displays a label and a point marker style. And so the ones above take precedent over the ones below. So in our drawing, GS takes precedent over all points. So what we're going to see is when we change all points and move it up above GS, our information for GS gets overridden by the all points group. So we're going to go ahead and flip that down and hit apply and hit OK. And you'll notice that when I did that, it changed my label display style. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to flip it back, and we're going to look and see what overrides do. So I'm going to go to point groups. I'm going to go to properties. I'm going to grab GS and bump it up and hit apply and hit OK. And so we've now changed back. And what I know is that we have a description key set for our calc points that forces calc points to always look like this. What overrides does is if you go into a point group and you want that point group to override one of your description key sets, what you can go ahead and do is you can go to this overrides tab in your point group properties, and you can see we have overrides for raw description, point elevation, style, and point label style. So if I want to override my label style for my calc points to be my display order change, what I'm going to go ahead and do is check override, and I'm going to hit apply. And what that effectively does is it overrides the description key set to display my label style. What it doesn't do is it doesn't override my point groups that lie above it. So my GS points lie in a point group that is above my all points group. So my GS governs over the all points group. And so the override in the all points group does not override a point group that is above it in the list.